The good old clap, take one.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your fucking lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought we were boxing.
All right, so we have the freshly crowned, maybe the most freshly crowned ever on this podcast, 2022 Cuervo Classic Malibu Longboard Champion, and now a two-time WSL World Longboard Champion on the lineup just hours after your big win. Soleil Errico, thank you so much for joining us after what I'd imagine would be a night of celebration.
Yeah, it definitely was a night of celebration last night. Everyone, we all celebrated at the Aviator Nation party that they threw, and it was really fun. Yeah, it was cool to see everyone there, like, because, you know, in the contest, we're all like in our zone, we're competing and we're serious. And then once the contest is over, then we can just like be normal again. And like, yeah, so it was really cool to be there with everyone. And yeah, I'm really happy.
You know, it's one of those rare things in surfing. And obviously we've made a lot of changes to all the tours to design them in a way where the very best surfing's happening in the water, where the world title happens in the final heat of the year. And it's not always a guarantee on the longboard side, but it went down like that for you in Malibu. Talk us through the day in the sense of how you were feeling ahead of the day starting. And then as that pressure mounted, where it's like whoever wins this final is going to win the world title. That's a really special thing.
Yeah. For me, like, I felt like I prepared so much for that event, considering like I lived here and I'm able to surf here a lot before. But I just felt like if I had the waves, if the sets came through, then I could do it, you know? And I had that confidence in myself from surfing here since I was 13. And I've been practicing out here a lot. And so, yeah, I just like would just say to myself when I was out there, just have fun and enjoy surfing Malibu with like two other people out, because if you know surfing Malibu, it is not easy. It is the most hectic place to surf in, I think, the world, honestly. Like the stuff that goes on at Malibu in terms of like dropping in and getting in the way is like, it's uncomparable. So being out there and pumping waves with like one other girl was just like insane.
It's interesting you say that too, because a lot of the WSL Final 5 competitors from the Rip Curl WSL Finals at Lowers a few weeks ago had a similar comment where they're like, "Oh my God, like Lowers, not dissimilar to First Point at Malibu on any given free surfing day is just packed," and it can be very frustrating just to feel like you're ready to go on competition day.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy surfing. Yeah, Lowers. I feel like Lowers is kind of like the shortboard wave, like, of Malibu. Like, Malibu's like
right, yeah.
Lowers in a way. They're very similar because like Lowers is like the iconic shortboard break, and like Malibu's the iconic longboard break. So I thought it was so sick that they had both of the final events in those places. But yeah, being out there with, you know, in a practice session is so different than a heat in terms of people. But yeah, so that's why it's even more special to compete out there with like one other girl, because it almost feels like euphoric because you're like, where is everyone? Right. And you just like have all these waves to yourself. You can pick whatever wave you want. It's like, in a way, like yesterday I was getting like, I don't know, like if you went on a trip to Mexico, you know how there's like no one out. It kind of felt like that. So yeah, it was a cool day.
Your last world title was 2018, pre-pandemic. It was an entirely different world, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that world title was clinched in Taiwan, so a completely different part of the world. You know, what did it feel radically different competing, as you pointed out, like so close to home in Malibu compared to the last time you won the world title?
Yeah, like before I won my world title a couple years ago, like I did not have any expectation. Like I was just like going out there and just, I didn't even think I'd make the first round. And then like every heat I would make, it'd be like, oh, sick, I made the next one. And then, oh, I made the next one. And then the final came in the final, I like wasn't even thinking. I was just surfing and having fun. And like, I didn't care. I mean, obviously you care a little bit, but if I got second, like I would be stoked, you know? But this event was so different because I was like, I gotta win this because like, I felt like there was a pretty big expectation on me considering like I live here and surf here all the time. And it wasn't really an expectation that I felt from other people. It was more an expectation that I put on myself and also I didn't want to let anyone down. So it was very different. And then also like when I won a couple years ago, I didn't even like remember the moment because I was just like floating because it was just so like, I couldn't even comprehend what was going on. And then this time, like, because I am at Malibu all the time, like, it just felt very natural. So I felt like way more grounded and I like remembered everything. So yeah, very different experiences.
You know, as you pointed out, like winning in Taiwan, you're like, if I make it out of round one, that's going to be a moral victory for me. Yeah. Does like winning the world title, did that kind of transform the way that you looked at your career between, it's been 4 years between then and now? Like, did you start setting your own expectations or in conversation with your supporters? Did those things kind of change pretty radically after that first world title?
Yeah. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a competitive longboarder since I was young, but definitely after I won, I really understood like my potential. And then started thinking more in the long run, like if I could win 2 or 3 more, or 4, whatever. So yeah, definitely like it definitely made me like realize my capability and yeah.
No, for sure. And you mentioned, having so much experience out at Malibu. Do you think that First Point Malibu is one of those waves that lends itself to, like a local advantage in terms of being able to read the lineup, read which waves are going to be better than others? Because obviously there's some waves around the world, and I'll use kind of the championship tour as a parallel. Like certainly growing up at Pipeline is helpful if you're going to be out at Pipe because it's not an easy wave to surf. Whereas something like a lower trestles there's a local advantage maybe, but it's a pretty user-friendly kind of wave to where even if you don't have a ton of experience out there, you could still perform very well. How do you kind of where do you rate First Point in terms of local advantage and sort of past experience?
I think having a local advantage at Malibu is very helpful because Malibu, the way the sets come through at Malibu is very different than any kind of typical point break, because especially in like fall swells, like I don't know if you noticed, but there was like in a couple of my heats there would be like a 1 wave set and then like another 1 wave set and then like a 4 wave set. Like it would just come through not consistently, whereas like other places it would like there would be like a 4 wave set every time. So that definitely played a role in my strategy, like because throughout the event I would try to figure out whether or not like which waves I should go on. So if a 1 wave set was coming through, it was really hard to see if there was one behind it. So do you just take that first wave or do you, sit it out and wait for the next one? But last year I had I lost pretty early because I won on the first wave and the second one was better. And that like literally scarred me. So in this event, I did do it a couple times, but I made sure that there's a second wave. Like I would stand up on my board and like look over and make sure that there's a second wave because I did not want to make the same mistake again.
And even that's really interesting. And also kind of looking, through your journey through the event, like pretty comfortable win in round 1, pretty comfortable win in the round of 16. ultimately pretty comfortable win in the semis and the finals. You got off to a good start, and you kind of look at the point spread, and it's pretty healthy between you and your competitors. The one that was so tight, was your quarterfinal against Alice, and it was one that you had to you turned the tide inside the last 40 seconds, and talk us through just that last minute and emotionally kind of going, okay, I need something. Am I going to get it? And then I got it, and then. Does doing something like that change the way you approach those semis and finals? Because it's almost like, okay, I got through the crux of this event. That was the hardest challenge I'm going to have up until this point, and maybe I'm on a track to win this thing here. I'm curious if that played out for you.
Yeah, in the quarterfinals, like that heat was specifically slower. So it was like what I was talking about earlier, how there was like one wave set. And so that was occurring a lot more in that heat than like the semis and finals. Semis and finals, it was just like pumping. Like there would be like a flurry of sets and then it would go flat, and there'd be that more like, it would be easier to read. But in the last 40 seconds, I knew there was a second wave behind the first one. But I didn't know if I had enough time to get the second wave because my watch stopped and I didn't know if I had enough time. So I kind of just was like, I got to just give myself the opportunity, because God forbid I don't have enough time to get the second wave. It's over. Like I don't even give myself a shot. So I went on the first one, and it looked like a pretty good wave. So I knew that if I surfed it the best I possibly could, like I could potentially get the score. And after I rode that wave in, everyone on the beach was pretty silent. And I thought that was because they didn't think I got it. But I just don't think anyone knew what was going to happen.
Right.
So it was just one of those situations where it could just go either way. And typically it wouldn't go my way. There's been so many times where it's gone the other way. And after they called it and said that, I won the heat, then after that, I was like, okay, it's on. This is the gnarliest thing that could happen probably in the contest. Now it's all uphill from here. So, and I kind of knew that it was getting more and more consistent. So I was more I had more hope for the sets to come in my semis and final heat.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk equipment for a second. Heading into an event like the Cuervo Classic Malibu Longboard Championships, how many boards out of your entire quiver are in play for you to potentially use in competition? And then based on the conditions of the 2-day event, which one do you decide to go with? What kind of model and dimensions, and why do you select that board?
So I had a magic board actually 3 months ago, or no, I had a magic board, and I was surfing one day and I forgot to strap it on my car. It was just one of those really stressful days where you're just out of it and, just forget stupid stuff like that. And I forgot to strap it and it flew off my car. So after that, I was obviously freaking out. But thank God for my shaper, and my coach, CJ, who's also he designs my boards, and he, and my shaper, Roy Sanchez, whipped up a couple new boards that, actually worked better somehow than the one I had before. So I'm very thankful for them. They are the reason why I can surf the way that I surf, is because of, partially because of the boards that I'm riding. And we designed that board specifically for the Malibu event. It's a 9.6, and that's my perfect weight, length that I like for my longboards at Malibu. Yeah.
One of the really cool things that we've had at a lot of events in the last few years is the Rising Tides program. And that program at the Malibu event was the first time we had adaptive surfers as well as boys paddle out. You also work with other organizations like TheraSurf and Walk on Water. obviously, people are at these events to compete, but being able to have those programs where you're able to interact with young people coming up, it's a pretty special thing. And can you talk to us a little bit both about, your work with TheraSurf and A Walk on Water, as well as the Rising Tides program at the Malibu event this season?
Yeah. Rising Tides, that was that was the evening of the first day of competition. And I had 2 heats that day. So I wasn't too exhausted, but even if I was like extremely exhausted, I would have done it anyways, because I absolutely love doing that stuff. It makes me feel so good. And it was just so cool, because there are a lot of like young girls and boys there that like I didn't know, but that I met, and they actually surf so good. And I think it's just so like, I don't know. It's just a really cool feeling to just be around like the younger generation in a sport that you love and care about. And like a couple of the boys and girls there I knew, and we surf Malibu all the time. And it was just a really fun night. And we surfed like till sunset. We like surfed into the sunset. And there were like literally like 30 to 40 kids out at Malibu just dropping on each other. And we were having a ball. It was cool.
That's very cool. Well, we mentioned it at the top. You are now a 2-time world champion, and you now join the ranks of sporting icons like Kaylee Moniz and Harley Ingleby and Jen Smith and Phil Rajman and Bo Young. And it's a very tight but a very prestigious class to be a part of. And has that sunk in yet for you the morning after?
Yeah, I feel like winning 2 establishes like yourself even more as a world champ. I mean, obviously, but I feel like with 1, that's amazing. But like people could argue and say, oh, she got lucky, or like, oh, it was just her day. But with 2, that really like puts you, I feel like, sort of at the top, because again, like it establishes your success a bit more. So yeah, having 2 it's a really good feeling.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will wind the clock back on Soleil Errico. We'll be right back. All right, so you mentioned you've got a lot of experience in Malibu, but give us the full Soleil Errico, bio background. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Mom, dad, siblings? What was the deal?
I was actually born in New York City, and both my parents, that's where they met, and my whole family's from the East Coast. So I'm kind of like an East Coast girl, if you think about it. I wasn't like, cause there's like a few girls on tour that were like literally like born like in Hawaii or somewhere that's very like surf oriented. And like, I don't feel like I was technically like born into surfing. It just like came to me from living in Hawaii. So I was born in New York. We moved to California, and then when I was 8, we moved to Hawaii. And then that's where I got into surfing. And because in Hawaii, like, there's nothing else to do but surf. And then my dad just took me out, like, and then after that it was over. And I was just hooked. And then I started doing, like, little contests and, just kept doing it. And then when I was 13, we moved back to California. And that's where, when we moved back to California and I started surfing Malibu, First Point actually, is when I really realized that I wanted to be a longboarder, a professional longboarder. And it's so funny because like First Point is where I sort of realized that. So it was so cool to win at that exact place. So yeah, that was so special. And then, so me and my family have gone back and forth from Hawaii. But yeah, now I'm living in San Diego, going to school. But I come back here all the time because it's like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive. So yeah, I've been around, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned, being in Hawaii, there wasn't anything else that grabbed your interest, but was that always the case? Were there any other sports or hobbies early on? Or, when you get hooked at 8 into surfing, it could be a pretty clear runway to like, nope, I'm doing this from now on.
I was always involved in sports throughout my life. I also shortboarded from when I was like 8 to 13. I stopped shortboarding when we moved to Malibu from Kauai. But yeah, I did all the shortboard contests, and I actually like competed with Honolulu a lot. So I've been competing with her in the shortboard and longboard since I was a kid. Well, obviously just longboard now. Yeah, so I've always been into competitive sports. I played soccer for a really long time, and I played my whole life actually until I was in high school, and I had to decide whether to just play soccer or surf. And because I was getting hurt a lot actually in soccer. And so that's why I chose surf. That's one of the reasons why I chose to do surfing. But I just saw myself having more of a career in surfing than soccer. But that was a really tough decision because I really love playing soccer. It was so much fun for me. And I played a lot in Hawaii, and the girls in Hawaii are really good, and they are really gnarly and dirty and yeah. But yeah, soccer, and I loved snowboard. That's so much fun. My little sisters, I have 2 little sisters, and they're really good skiers. So that's kind of like a family dynamic that we have. We all go skiing a lot. That's kind of it. Yeah.
Makes sense. And it is interesting too, obviously, moving back to Malibu, and it's a world famous sort of mecca for longboarding, and you making that transition to like, no, I want to focus on this particular discipline. Were there any surfers in Malibu when you were younger and kind of developing into ultimately a 2-time world champ that really influenced you stylistically in terms of the way you surf?
Yeah, so when I was 14, I met Taylor Jensen, and he started coaching me from when I was like 14 to 18, I think. And then he had another baby, and that just like preoccupied him. So he just wasn't available to be there for me as much in terms of like coaching. But we're still like super tight with their family, and they're the best. And it's so cool, like still competing with him because he's still doing so well. And after being a 3-time world champ, like he made the semis, and overall is in like 3rd place, which is awesome. But yeah, him, and then CJ Nelson, who is coaching me now. I have always looked up to him, and I remember watching him surf Malibu and like the Coalition Club events when I was like 13, and just being like in awe of him and his surfing. And yeah, there's a lot of people at Malibu that I watch. Like, I feel like when the waves are good, there's so many good surfers out at Malibu, and it's like you could just sit on the beach and watch them all day. And they're not necessarily competitive surfers. They're more just like, just do it for fun, but they're so good at it. And Malibu's such a good wave that it shows everyone's skill. So yeah.
Making the decision to be a professional surfer, regardless of the discipline, whether it's longboarding or shortboarding, big wave surfing, whatever, it's a pretty Wild West kind of ecosystem. And that, historically, there's not like, yep, you do this and then you do that and then you do this, and if you make it to this level, it's worth this much money. It's different into a lot of other sports that way. And in particular, how radically the industry's changed in the last 2 decades. You making the decision, I'm going to be a professional longboarder. What motivated you to commit to that, and then how is that, and also at what age? I'm curious too. And then how is your journey map the expectation when you set out to be a pro surfer?
Yeah. When I was young, like when I was Grom, as I said, like I did longboarding and shortboarding, and it kind of just came down to what I enjoyed doing more. And also I have a fear of surfing really big waves. And when you shortboarders tend to surf bigger waves, obviously. So that was one of the deciding factors. But also I just feel like longboarding just like fit me as a person more. And it just, I don't know, it just like fit me with like who I am, if that makes sense. And it was just kind of like a feeling, and it just came kind of down to what I enjoyed doing more. So I feel like that's, just what it came down to. And I'm really glad I made that choice, because it's been working out. So I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else.
Yeah. Well, and you're in the history books now 2 times, so it's pretty cool. And you mentioned that you're going to school, I think, University of San Diego, which, geez, just to be honest, like surfers at an elite level, again, agnostic at discipline, it's pretty rare that most of them even sort of finish high school in a public setting. A lot of them do homeschooling, let alone go on to get an advanced degree, and get an undergraduate degree. What was the genesis for that decision from you, and what are you studying at USD?
So I didn't have like a high school experience. I did online school my whole life, and that in itself was very lonely. And I just, it didn't make me happy. Like I didn't enjoy online school at all. I didn't like have any friends because of it. I feel like, because you just weren't at school. You weren't around like kids your own age. I was either like surfing or doing like homework with like my tutor in my room, so I didn't really get out much. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to college. Also, like, I think college is super important to just like develop your intellect and your education. And also, like, besides surfing, I could possibly find something else also that I want to do, and sort of figure that out. And also, like, I feel like it develops social skills, because you meet a lot of people that are especially like your age. And so there's a lot of benefits from it. And it's really hard though. Like it's a struggle. Every semester, I feel like I'm always like fighting my teachers on letting me because last semester I had to finish finals like 2 weeks early. So I had to talk to all my teachers and be like, hey, like I have a contest, like I have to leave. And thank God they're all accepting, but you don't know, like every semester you get new teachers. So you don't know if they're going to be accommodating or not. So it's tough. But I feel like I'm making it work the best I can. And God forbid I can't make it work 1 year, I'll just like defer a year. And that's the good thing about college. It's more flexible. I'm trying to make it work.
What is your approach with your teachers? Do you go in like before the semester starts and send them a note and be like, hey, my name's Soleil Errico. I'm a 2-time world longboard champion, and I might need some time. I might need some accommodation in terms of traveling and competing. Or do you not do that and you go into class for a couple of weeks and you're like, oh, this teacher really likes me. Now I'm going to drop the hammer and be like, oh, by the way, how do you deal with the teachers at USD?
I wish I could do that. I'm not like the type of person that will just like go in and start like naming my credentials to someone I don't know. Like it's just like it's not my thing. But it's important to tell them like what's up. Like you can't sell yourself short, or else they're not gonna like understand like the situation. So I probably like when the semester starts, I wait probably like 2 weeks before like the contest is coming up. And then I, go into their office hours and I tell them the situation, and they so far have been super accommodating, but it really helps to like actively go in there during their office hours, during their time, and tell them, rather than just like sending them an email and being like, hey, I'm not going to be at school. 'Cause then they don't really like understand what's going on and the level that like, I'm competing at. So, definitely going in there ahead of time and talking to them is really helpful.
Makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned before, like, the advantage of going to college is exposing yourself to just different things, different areas of study and things that might, give you a different perspective on things or things that might interest you. Have you found anything that you like, particularly going to school, like any area of study?
I actually have. I think I'm going to major in communication. Yeah, because that's kind of like the only sort of major that I don't know, it kind of like, I just understand it the best, and I feel like it will benefit me the most in my career. So like this semester I'm taking like a public speaking class, which is like super important because I'm not a good public speaker, and like public speaking in front of a classroom full of like kids, or not kids, but like people my age, is so different than doing like interviews like for surfing or like social media content, because with that, like I'm in my element and I'm like typically know like or I know the person like that I'm getting interviewed by, like, Strider yesterday, like I know Strider, I surf with him all the time. So it's like, it's more comfortable, but like being in a classroom is so different. And like, I'm actually like, honestly, one of the worst public speakers in my class, which I didn't like expect because I do like all this stuff with surfing, but like these kids, are so good at it. And I think it's because they like had like a normal high school experience where they would public speak in a classroom setting, and I didn't. So I've never had that. So yeah, public speaking I really want to get better at. And then like I'm taking like another like communication class and like a couple like GE like core requirement ones that you kind of have to take in order to graduate. But yeah, I think I'm going to continue with communication.
It's very cool. We're going to take one more break and we'll be right back. So before we went to break, you talked about, what you've been up to at school, how you're really investing in your future. You're now the reigning 2-time World Longboard champion, and on the heels of yesterday's event, the WSL has announced the 2023 Longboard Tour schedule, which includes an event in Bells Beach, an event in El Salvador, and the Malibu Championships with a fourth event that is committed to but hasn't been announced yet. So it's a proper tour next year. What are your thoughts on that? Getting that announcement out there and knowing directionally, okay, this is what my 2023 year looks like, especially after all the uncertainty of the pandemic over the last couple seasons.
Yeah, I don't really know. Like, obviously I want to be there for every single event, but I just don't know, like with college, if it's gonna happen. But I feel like I can figure it out. I feel like if I take more classes during like the spring than the fall or something, like just try to structure it so that like I'm taking less classes during the times where the contest is going to be like the call. I actually just saw that this morning and I was thinking about it like, oh my God, like there's 4 events. Like, what am I going to do?
It's a big time commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. And they're like in different countries and whatnot. But I feel like I'm going to end up just doing all of them and figuring it out. And, I mean, I hope that happens, but yeah, that's super exciting. I think that the tour is going in the right direction, and obviously having like the event at Malibu is just like the cherry on top for it, and because it's so iconic, and yeah, it's really exciting.
Makes a lot of sense. One of the things that people are pretty familiar with is just, if you surf, traveling with equipment can be a real pain in the ass, and we see it on the championship tour all the time, and frankly, those surfers travel with a lot of boards. But traveling with longboards is probably like a whole different kettle of fish. And I'm sure you've traveled a lot, throughout your career, but the idea of going to Bells Beach in Australia to compete, do you go, okay, I've got some magic boards here at home in Malibu. I'm definitely bringing those, even though they're basically mini airplane wings, on the plane and bringing them all the way over there? Or is it something where you say, you know what? I've actually have the opportunity to work with shapers in each of these locations, and I'll get my equipment when I turn up.
Yeah. I think it's important to, like, in terms of that, like, study the wave and ask, like, because we have a couple friends that live in Victoria and Australia, and like text them and ask them, like, what's the wave like? Like, is it similar to this wave or that wave? And kind of just figure it out doing that. And I mean, I kind of like, I've obviously watched Belle's like on the shortboard tour, and it looks like it's the right point break. I mean, it looks like kind of like Malibu, but I don't really know. I honestly haven't studied it that much. And then I don't know. I have never obviously I haven't been to El Salvador, and I haven't surfed that wave. So I don't know what that wave is like. And then obviously Malibu, I know what I'm going to ride. But yeah, in terms of like those events, just got to study the waves and ask people and whatnot, and just figure it out.
If you had to add a venue to the longboard tour, anywhere in the world, don't worry about anything, and we got Malibu on there, what wave would you like to see on there at some point in the future?
Oh my God. Wow, that's tough because there's so many.
You only get one, though. You got to pick one.
No, I know. I don't know, because like I haven't surfed this wave, but it looks so fun to longboard. Jeffreys Bay, but like not on a big day, obviously, probably when it's like chest high. Like some of the off days where they ran like this, like during the shortboard event, and looked so fun. And I had like, I saw like, there are a couple of the shortboard girls longboarding on the off days at Jeffreys Bay, and the wave looked so good for a longboard. I was tripping out. So probably there, honestly, would be really cool.
That's a good choice. That's a good choice. Well, you've accomplished so much, and you're still so young, and you're going to college. If you had to look at your life and career over the next like 5 to 10 years, like, do you have goals? Like, what do you forecast for yourself? Is it more world titles? Is it graduating? Is it, doubling and tripling down on being a professional surfer? Is it maybe stepping away and pursuing a career somewhere else? Is it maybe both things? Like, how do you kind of view the next 5-10 years of your life playing out?
Obviously, like, I want to win more world titles. I guess it just depends on like where the tour goes and where they have events and how many events they have. And I obviously like want to continue to compete like as long as I possibly can, and just try to make it work with school. And then obviously when I'm out of school, compete. And I see myself competing, for a while, and just gonna try to continue to work hard and get better at surfing, and try to pursue my college career. Yeah.
It's very cool, and we're very fortunate to have you as a as a representative and a world champion. Before we go, we put some questions out to our Instagram followers at the Lineup Pod, and we got a lot back, but we've whittled it down to 3. The first question is from Maya Fuku, who asks, "What is your favorite wave?"
I feel like we know. Malibu. Especially now. Right. Brought me a world title.
It was already special, and now it's just like, 10 times. Second question is from Oth Nguyen, who asks, "Do you have a favorite Kook moment from growing up or learning that you can look back now at and laugh at?"
Oh my God. I actually, oh God, in a few years ago, I met one of my friends from dropping in on her and losing my board, or like yeah, I like kicked out, or I fell, and my board hit her in the nose and almost broke her nose. So that's how we became friends. So I feel like that's one of my kookiest moments that I've had, for sure. Also, yesterday at the Rising Tide, or no, 2 days ago at the Rising Tides, me and Sophia Culhane, who was in the final with me, we did a party wave, and I was like joking around, and I like stood up, switch stance, and was like squatting, just like because we were just having fun. We were just kooking around at that point. And then I went back to regular stance, and my board like launched out and almost like hit her. And I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. But like, I was like, oh my God, I almost like took out this chick that I literally compete with. Like, what am I doing? Anyways, it was weird. I don't know why. I was just fooling around. But yeah, definitely that came to mind too.
And now that you beat her in the final, do you think Sophie's thinking back and being like, she did that on purpose? Like,
no, I did not.
We'll ask her next time. I'm joking. I'm sure. Last question that we selected is from @TUCool for Megan, who asks, what is your advice for someone who wants to start longboarding?
Probably just, if you try longboarding and you love it, go with that gut feeling and just continue to do it, and just obviously try to get better. And if you don't love it, then maybe don't do it. I feel like anything you do, you got to love in your heart. And if you're going to pursue it, possibly as a career, it's got to be like, you got to eat, sleep, and breathe it and have a passion for it. So if you love longboarding, go with that and just continue to do it. Yeah.
That's good advice. And I think it's really relevant in 2022, where like you can surf any way you want to, as long, and the way to do it is to do whatever is sort of true to yourself. Whereas maybe in decades in the past, as you pointed out, it's like, the entire community kind of puts one thing on a pedestal. And even if that one thing's not for you, I think some people are like, well, I have to do that one thing. Whereas now it's like, there's so many beautiful ways to surf. It doesn't really matter what the discipline is. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
We are now down to our final segment. So this is the lightning round. This is 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. Okay. If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, a single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad, bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
A single fin.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Burrito or pizza?
Pizza.
Last book you read?
Oh my God. This is embarrassing. How do I not remember? It was like in my English class last semester, like an actual book, not a textbook.
Yeah.
It was like 10 ways to delete your social media account right now. That was the name of it. And in our English class, we were learning about the awareness of how social media controls you, which I think is great, by the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like,
yeah.
They made us read like Shakespeare when I went to school. Now you get to read like, practical stuff.
God, no.
What is the best surf film ever?
Endless Summer.
One wave you never have to go back to.
Oh no. Oh, never have to go back to. Oh my God, this is so bad, but like, I don't like Huntington. And I know that's where they have the US Open, but that wave and me just do not mix. So probably
Fair
Huntington,
enough.
which
We
I hope
appreciate the
WSL
honesty.
doesn't hate. I hope WSL doesn't hate me for that, but
yeah.
it's
on
tough.
the list now. No, you're good. I feel like we've already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life.
Oh. Probably Honolulu Bay. in Kauai, which is where I grew up. That's like where I grew up surfing when I was young. It's just a magical place. Yeah.
Very cool. Best person to share a lineup with?
My dad. He doesn't surf a whole lot anymore, but when he does, he's my favorite person to surf with.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
Oh my God. Everyone at Malibu. No, not everyone. I shouldn't say that. But like all the people that pretend that they're from there and drop in on everyone. I would rather not surf those people.
Good answer. Okay, last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by...
Oh God. Being assured of myself, I guess.
That's a great answer. Soleil Errico, congratulations. 2-time world champion winner of the 2022 Cuervo Classic Malibu Longboard Championships. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I can't wait to see what you do in your career, both in and out of the water. And yeah, we'll look forward to having you back on the podcast very soon.
Thank you so much.